I'm delighted today to be speaking to Traci Schubert Barrett. She is a sought after international speaker, coach, and best selling author of What If There's More? Finding Significance Beyond Success. Prior to launching Navigate the Journey, a business consulting and leadership development firm, in 2014, she co founded the popular national cable television network HGTV, where she enjoyed seeing a fledgling idea turn into a $1 billion media empire. With a master's in professional psychology and over 30 years of business experience, she now specializes in coaching C suite executives and business leaders, helping them discover more meaning and purpose in their work and lives. I've invited Traci on. We met at a Bureau of Digital Agencies event in Vegas in September this year. And I was so impressed, particularly with the keynote that she did on stage. Very, very engaging. And I've invited Traci today to talk to me specifically about both agency owners and account managers and those in client service leadership, about leadership itself and about really embracing and furthering their leadership capabilities and skills. So, a huge warm welcome, Traci.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm really excited about talking to you. So, I'm going to dive straight into the questions. Now, you work with a lot of agencies, you work with a lot of different businesses, but what specifically brings an agency owner or leader to the point where they recognize that they need some help in their leadership skills and come to you for some help?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the business owners and leaders that come to navigate the journey are really there's pain points, but there's also growth points. So kind of pros and cons are bringing them to us. So, you know, it could be a lack of clarity. It could be a lack of direction for the future. They could be struggling with their leadership ability, like making poor decisions, bad hires. They're not holding anybody accountable, especially themselves. There could be like a lack of trust on their team, a lack of cohesion on their leadership team. But then there's also other reasons that they come to us in general. I mean, some leaders want to scale and grow their business. They understand the concept that what got them to where they are today, even if their business is successful, is not going to get them where they want to go, whether that's scaling the business, scaling their skills. Some people want to sell. Some people want to launch a new idea or adventure. They need a fresh objective or an experience perspective. I'm always impressed when an agency owner or a member of a leadership team comes and says, "You know what? I just want to be better at what I do. I want to show up better. I want to have better cohesion with my team. I just want to be a better leader." And I'm realizing that I just need somebody to be honest with me. I need somebody to be objective, and I want to be the best version of myself. And I think, those are really people that I admire that understand and have that growth mindset.
How many people do you meet that have that growth mindset, Traci, in the own agencies? Do you think that that's quite common?
I'm not sure if it's quite common. I actually feel like it's becoming more common because there's just more exposure, whether that's social media, the books that have been written, that it seems that recently, especially in the last, 5 or 10 years, people are more vulnerable and willing to be vulnerable about their leadership skills, about what they might not know than they have been in maybe like our parents' generation, where leadership was really just like moving up the corporate ladder and having a lot of authority. And I think now people are realizing, especially small business owners and small agency owners, are realizing that without these skills, they're really not going to be able to scale well. And nobody wants to scale their company and be miserable. And I think people are starting to realize that when I become good at leadership, I'm actually finding more joy in the process of scaling and growing my agency. And that's my ultimate goal. I want people to find joy in what they do and really, I mean, really understand that work doesn't have to be just toil and hardship all the time.
Fascinating. And this was what your book was focused on, right? So finding the joy in what you do.
Yes, and really redefining success for yourself. I think for me, I had a very fast-paced corporate career, for a few decades and or a couple of decades. And I think I sort of lost myself in that, even though it was a fabulous company. I loved growing and scaling the company and all that I experienced. But I think that I hit a crossroads where I was like, who am I? And what do I want for my future? And really wanted to understand what had been driving me up to that point, and then what I could do to redefine success for myself to help the second half of my life be more on my own terms, I suppose. And so, what I'm trying to help readers understand is that, success can be based on our leadership impact, our legacy, our unique design, and our gifts and talents, and just finding a way to, even if it's just with one person a day, have that connection and have that impact while we're working, that we can make our work matter in ways that maybe we didn't realize in our 20s. And if we can, man, the younger you can get behind this concept and really seeing yourself differently and seeing your work differently, we can really find a lot of joy and enjoyment in what we do.
Really, really powerful. And I presumably, I mean, my next question was about sort of how you work with people to sort of evaluate where they are and where they want to go. And what you just said there was quite powerful. It's like, who am I and what do I want for my future? And I'm presuming that that is not a one-time thing. I'm presuming that people should be doing that on a kind of ongoing basis.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, that's what self-awareness is about, right? We're always trying to analyze, where are we? What is the best version of me? And I think when I'm evaluating, when a leader comes to me, I'm trying to go deep as quickly as possible so that we can make traction and gain traction on their leadership skills. And so I might use assessments to help us go faster, like EQI or DISC or, something like that. A 360 evaluation is always priceless. And then we're going to set objectives together. But I'm really looking at a leader on kind of like a two-sided approach. Like I'm looking at the results that you're able to accomplish. So your competence as a leader and a business owner, and, are you able to drive the team in the right direction with the right objectives? And are you holding yourself and the team accountable? Do you have mission and vision and values? So I'm looking at sort of your competency in your leadership. And then the flip side, I'm looking at your relationships as a leader. So how are your connections with the people on your team and with your clients? And are you showing a level of emotional intelligence? Are you honest with yourself and with others? Are you coming across as authentic and genuine? And when I can get a leader to a place where they have both of these things balanced, then they're becoming a leader that people want to follow. They're not a leader that's trying to just be liked. They're a leader that's actually respected. And they're not a leader that's just worried about the bottom line. They're also worried about, having a true and authentic connection with their employees, their staff, their clients. And that is helping them have a fuller impact on what they're doing and really, again, becoming a leader that people want to follow instead of have to follow.
I mean, this might sound a naive question, but what you've described there is about them and their leadership ability, like the competencies and the relationships. Do you find sometimes that when people come and work with you, they want to go immediately to the business problems and kind of sort out the business problems. Whereas what you're doing, and from what you've just, the way I'm interpreting it is holding up a mirror to themselves and saying it kind of starts with you, and then the results, the business, and the impact will come later, will come afterwards.
Well, I can find some of the answers in those business struggles. So I really look at leadership coaching. The type of coaching that we do is business coaching as well. So I can, especially because we've worked with so many agencies, I can sort of figure out or read between the lines what's going on. And I always say that things don't really fall through the cracks. They'll fall through roles and responsibilities of each person or how somebody's looking at the issue at hand. And so sometimes if they come to me and they say, I just keep making bad hires, or, the team's unhappy because of this, or we don't seem to be signing the right type of clients. So these are clear business issues, and we can kind of dig deep on what's happening behind that and weave in leadership concepts at the same time. So it might be how you're looking at the people you're hiring. It might be how you're not empowering the people around you to help you make those decisions. You might not be listening well to what your staff is telling you. You might be the type of leader that thinks you have the answer before you ever even go and run it past the team. And so when the team's giving you feedback, you're not really listening. So there's lots of ways that business issues could be tied to the way you're leading or the way you're engaging your team. And so most of these things kind of go hand in hand. They're not always, you know, I would say they're rarely ever the sole fault of the business owner or the leader, but there might be something there for us to sort of dig in and look at to help solve some of these business problems. But some of it might just be you're just not doing some typical business things that you need to do, or you're not seeing the forest for the trees. You're so thick into the weeds that you haven't risen above it and actually done, what we do in strategic planning. Like you haven't looked at the big picture. You've lost your mission. You've lost that compass. You're not defining the right objectives. Your objectives are too small, or they're not addressing the right things, or you see this as a sales problem, but it's a process problem. And so, some of it is going to be tied to how you're looking at the business, and some of it is going to be tied to how you're leading through the business, leading the team through that business.
So that is actually really powerful. The fact that you can help with both sides of that coin, and navigate the journey. I mean, I should probably have asked you to elaborate on what the offer is of navigate the journey, but from what you've said so far, it's the business strategy and how to build the business, and also the leadership
Yeah.
that comes with it. Is that right?
That is, when we developed the company 10 years ago, my husband and I wanted to start a company together, and we both have very different skill sets. We also have a lot of similarities, but he is just kind of the master strategic planner. He's been doing it, for well over a decade. He loves it. I've never actually, I don't really know if I know another person as well as I know him that loves what they do as much as he does. I mean, he just loves being in a room, loves helping a team, and loves using strategic planning principles to help a team gain traction and clarity and really scale their business. And so we loved having that idea for that half of the business, but then wanting to be kind of a one-stop shop where you can come to us and also grow as a leader and get that coaching. So you also have the health side of the business. So you're not just growing profits, but you're strong and you're cohesive while you're doing it. And that is obviously the best way to scale and how you're going to be most successful. So we just decided, like, let's do both sides. Let's come together. Let's build this business. And we just started one client at a time, literally, building the business. And so it's been over the last 10 years really a fun time for us. And I think at this point in our career, we're in our 50s, we both have had corporate backgrounds. And so this is we're finding a lot of joy and kind of being the wind beneath other people's wings and helping them realize their dreams and hopes for their companies and for themselves individually.
That feels like a bit of a secret sauce, I think, from
Mm.
other companies that I've met. The fact that you combine, because you're right. I mean, you can fix the strategy, the processes, the way to hire and the plan and everything. But actually, at the end of the day, you need to execute it for sustainability in a way that's conducive to that energy that you have as a leader and your ability to lead. So,
Yes.
what for you, Tracy, are those kind of let's say, foundational principles or key traits of great leadership?
Hmm. Well, I spoke a little bit about it already with the results and the relationships. I think one of the litmus tests, if somebody's listening to this and trying to figure out like, where am I in this? I always say that successful leaders aren't panicked. They're purposeful. So if you're not feeling like you're available or present or you feel overwhelmed, then there might be something underneath that you have to untangle. And it could be that you're not delegating or trusting or empowering your team, or maybe you haven't hired the right people. Does everybody on your team or people that work with you understand what success looks like? Are we all singing from the same song sheet? And so I think that great leaders, they understand what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing. And they really have a deep knowledge of the people that are working around them. All the people that work with us and for us and even our clients, they want to be seen and known. And we all want that as humans, really. And so when you as a leader can see the people that are working around you and know them, then you're more likely to trust them, to delegate, to empower them. And really, those are the leaders that, that's really a lot of the secret sauce, too, right? Is that we see our team, we know our team, we trust our team, and we are able to kind of let go of the reins a little bit. And it's a scary thing for a lot of leaders to do, especially what I call kind of these accidental entrepreneurs. They had an idea. This happens with a lot of agency owners. They just wanted to like design or develop and next thing they know, they've created this great company that has, 20, 50, 100 people, and they're leaders now. They're leading, they're not practitioners. They're not individual contributors. So how do you make that leap? For some of these owners, it happened quickly and it's great. They have a successful, thriving company, but their leadership skills need to catch up to that. And so, the leaders that are like that get that, they're like, oh, okay, we're creating great product, we're, winning great clients, but am I doing a good job? Am I the best version of myself? Am I looking too panicked and crazy and not able to keep up with this growth? What do I need to do? I'm going to take a breath. I'm going to figure out what I need to do so that this business isn't, running me. I'm running it.
Mhm. Wow. It's funny, Tracy, because I work with a lot of team members, account
Mm,
managers of every level. And what I often find is people confide in me how they
mm,
feel about how they are being led.
yes.
So, I could think of a million sort of sound bites from conversations I've had, and I'd love to kind of throw some at you to kind of give
Yeah.
your thoughts around. Um, I had recently one lady who was actually given a presentation to give in front of the rest of the team, and unfortunately, the the agency leader kind of shut her down halfway through. And she felt embarrassed. She felt like she'd been a bit undermined and disempowered. And she obviously had a really bad taste in her mouth. And from that perspective, I mean, without really going into much more detail, if I was to come to you as a team member and think, you know, how would you start to unpick that scenario
Mm.
as it relates to leadership?
Yeah, I think, well, there's two things happening here, right? There's the person who's experiencing what it's like to be on the other side of this leader, and then there's the leader, him or herself, that's not picking up on what they're doing, right? And so, if I was coaching her and her experience in this, I would, start asking her questions about, could you can you approach this leader? Do you have that ability to really communicate well and share what it felt like, or is it a type of leader that isn't going to receive that well? I'd say either way, you really don't have a lot to lose to just say, like, I felt this way. I don't know if you meant it to come across this way. I'm guessing you didn't, but I feel like if I just share this with you, it will help me understand where you were coming from and what you were thinking, but also will help me get better for the next time. So I think when you approach your leader is not to assume that what they were doing was mean-spirited, but it was ignorance. And so when you can kind of approach them first with kind of curiosity and saying, I'd love to know talk more about this experience, what happened there in the conference room. And I'd love to, hear, what made you sort of like not let me continue. And I want to get better, but it was hard for me. I felt shut down. I wasn't, sure how to react to it. I felt embarrassed. It was awkward. And so I wanted to share with you what my feelings were, but I definitely want to hear from you, what your intentions are and how you can best coach me on this a situation for the next time. And so then you're kind of opening up to the leader being able to see like, oh dang, I didn't mean for it to, sorry, it was a knee-jerk reaction. I just knew the answer. Spat it out. If I was coaching the leader, if I had observed that, I would have said, here is a great example in emotional intelligence. We'll say empathy. So the emotional intelligence 2.0 tool that I use has 15 different subscales of emotional intelligence that it measured. And one of the most fascinating things that I have read about emotional intelligence is that the great leaders that are remembered, that people, really revere and that have the highest scores, the number one emotional intelligence subscale for them is empathy. And so great leaders have the ability to put themselves in other people's shoes. And they also have a great ability to read the room. So I'm never going to say to a leader that you're ever going to be perfect. We're all going to be growing as leaders until the day that we die. But in this situation, if this leader had had strong emotional intelligence, even if he or her had cut them off, then he could have said, oh, wait, I just realized what I did. I'm so sorry. I got ahead of myself. I'm going to sit back. You keep going. Here's just a little note and like keep going. So a great leader who's done work on emotional intelligence will catch themselves and can self-correct and also even if they're unable to self-correct in that moment and they are like a little bit of a freight train, will realize it later and then go to that person and say, that was wrong. Like what I did was a mistake. And leaders that can apologize, leaders that can self-correct in front of their employees, oh my goodness, the level of trust that goes up with the team because they're starting to see a leader that like knows themselves, that is willing to be vulnerable, that is willing to evolve and change. And that is, I think, the greatest retention tool you can have in an agency is that ability to see how you're coming across, to understand who you are, but then understand how other people are receiving you, what it's like to be on the other side of you. And so when you can get good at figuring that out and evaluating it and putting your finger on the pulse of it each and every day, or at least each and every week, then you're going to really, be seen as a great leader.
I'm so glad I asked you that question. I think that's going to be so helpful. Everything you've just said in response to that particular scenario, you can times that by 100. I
Yes.
suppose my follow-on question, because I want to kind of talk a little bit about being a team member on the receiving end of perhaps, let's say, under par leadership skills.
Mm.
I suppose my follow-on question would be, and it was great advice, make sure that you express, ask to speak to them afterwards, express how it made you feel. Don't assume malintent
Yes.
of how the leader was behaving, and just have that kind of discussion. So this is fantastic advice, I think, for anyone listening to this that perhaps has gone through something where they feel that there's, you know, a challenge with their leader. What would you be your advice, Tracy, if someone, two things really, either thinks, oh, that kind of thing has happened in the past, I've tried to have the conversation and it didn't, they weren't receptive, and I kind of know that that's what they're like, or perhaps they've had the conversation and it wasn't well received. Like, is the only option to leave because you're in the wrong place? Would you think out of those embers of how the person's left feeling, there would be some uh, light?
Yeah, it's hard. I love when people are able to work it out where they are. I'm not a big proponent of jumping ship, at least fast. The only exception to that is if you know your leader is like a narcissistic leader, whether that's overtly narcissistic or covertly narcissistic. And if that's the case, I mean, that's a really hard thing to overcome and endure. And in that case, I think, I've seen too many people suffer like emotional trauma from that. So it's like, you might need to find another role. But if you see that this person is really just ignorant or misled, sometimes just really getting to know each other more, like trying to make an inroad through personal connection, asking them about, how's your family doing? What'd you do this weekend? Trying to forge, because the way we grow trust is by knowing each other. And so the more your leader knows you, like knows you as a human, the more they're going to open up to receive some feedback. And so if you're able to kind of connect with them in a way, like, oh, did you see the game? Or, oh, what are you doing for Christmas or the holidays? Or what's your next vacation about? Oh, I've been there too. Like just getting to know them. And I feel like this has been kind of the hardest thing when it comes to like remote working or hybrid working or even post COVID is having that deep relationship. And this is why we're always saying to leadership teams, like, you've got to get your team together if you're remote. You have to have those annual retreats. You have to have those, even if it's getting the group together for a day, people need to know each other, because when we know each other, we start to care about each other. We start to cut each other a little more slack. We start to, receive feedback better. And then, also throwing out ideas to the team, like maybe, if your leader is open to this, like maybe you could do a team workshop, or maybe you could all do book club and read a book that we know is a great leadership book together. And hopefully your leader would participate in that. If they don't, that's a really bad sign. We want our leaders to really lead the charge and participating in these types of activities, but maybe that could also help open their eyes. But I know the frustration. I know what it's like to work for hard people and with hard people. And, it's really demotivating, and but I have seen leaders that I've started working with in the beginning that the team thought it was hopeless, and they've grown and they've changed. And I just think that is the most beautiful thing to see, is that if you enter into the work and you're willing to do the work, you can change, you can grow, you can still have your personality and still be quirky or brainy or whatever it is, but you're going to be a better version of yourself. And like, isn't that what we all want? It's what I hope that people want, is to be the best version of who they are. Like, I want them to still be unique. I want their gifts and talents to shine, but I want them to be the best version of that.
Love that. And equally, I mean, equally, people do share stories where, frankly, they would take a bullet for their leader. I mean,
Mm,
I've got some really great stories of people who were very loyal, and for many of the reasons you explain,
Mm,
because their leaders are expressing empathy, they are
yes.
being vulnerable, they are catching themselves and correcting and apologizing. So this is great stuff. You just going back one step, you mentioned that you do an evaluation, something emotional intelligence 2.0, is that right?
Hmm.
Is that
Yes.
something that you do as a team where everyone sees each other's results?
Well, I will do it individually with people, but I can do team workshops as well, where I wouldn't be sharing everybody's results, but I can share a team graph where people can see where the gaps are as a team. So, as a team, what are we missing as far as, and missing might not be the right word, but where are the areas we need to improve as far as emotional intelligence is concerned? And where are our strengths? And what does that mean for us as a team? The power really does come in individual debriefs where you're really learning individually, what do I need to lean into? How do I need to show up better? So I think that is a really great tool to use to really understand the team better. I also think for leaders, anybody in a leadership position, to go through a 360 evaluation, it's not your most favorite day at work because you're going to get results of how everybody thinks and feels about you and sees you. I've been through them. I know how it feels, but it is so powerful and helpful because I have seen leaders completely transform just from going through that because they'll think to themselves, "Oh, that's just one person that thinks about that about me," or "That's just so and so he complains a lot." But then when they see the whole team's results, and they're all anonymous, so they don't know who has said what, but they have to sit there with it and say, okay. And even great leaders that go through this, there's always something. There's always something we're not seeing about our, I mean, they're called blind spots for a reason because we don't see them. And so when they're unveiled to us, it's like, oh, yeah. And usually we've heard it before in the past. It's not the first time we've heard it. It's a nice reminder. And then you get coached on how to, how to overcome that or how to remedy that blind spot. And I think that's really, really powerful. And then also to understand your triggers. Like what's the thing that's triggering me that's causing me to do that? Causing me to have that reaction, causing me to, emotionally explode or emotionally shut down, which are both not great. How can I find emotional intelligence is all about balance. I want to be balanced. And so, if you're thinking about, I'll use just one example of assertiveness. That's one of the subscales. I want you to be a confident, assertive leader. What I don't want you to be is aggressive on one end of the spectrum or passive on the other end. And we've all had leaders like that. We've had leaders, especially if you worked back in, the 90s or the 80s, back in the day where people would slam doors and throw chairs and you're like, what's happening? Aggressive leadership or raise their voice or storm out of a meeting. Or you can have passive, which is also really disheartening. Somebody who is conflict avoidant. They see the problem, but they won't say or do anything. And they're just kind of fearful. And it's because either they want to be really liked and they don't like the feeling of not being liked, or they think they have a fear somebody's going to quit and they can't handle that. So there's issues on both sides of why leaders show up this way. What I'm trying to get them to is be in the middle. I want you to be assertive. I want you to have a voice. I want you to have confidence. I want you to be competent, but I want you to do it in a way that will be received because it doesn't matter if you're right. If you're not heard, who cares? You need to communicate in a way where you're going to be heard and followed as a leader.
There's probably a lot of people listening to what you've just said, myself included, thinking, yes, I've either worked with someone like that, that's on one side of the scale, or I've probably done it myself and I'm
Yep.
so guilty of that. So this evaluation tool would sorry, assess you in where you typically what end of the scale you would typically end up. Is that right?
Yeah. So you get a result where it shows you where you are on each of the 15 subscales. And then it gives you your top three strengths, and then it gives you your low three. And we all have a high three and a low three. That's just how it falls out. So with the low three, you can see, okay, these are probably your blind spots, and I'll be able to tell you how that would show up. How did that manifest itself in the workplace? And then the top three, I'll say, okay, well, these are your strengths, but here's the kicker. It's a strength, but if you lean into it too much, it's going to become a weakness. So I want you to use these strengths in the best way possible, but I don't, again, because it's all about balance, I don't want you to over index because then it's becoming a weakness. It's becoming a blind spot. And it's super powerful because people are like, oh my gosh, it's giving them words
Mm.
and context to how their behavior might show up, especially when they're stressed. So I say to them, this isn't, if you're having these blind spots, they're not showing up every day. When they're showing up is when the team's under stress, when we're overworked, when you have stress at home, when you're going through something personal. These things get triggered much faster. And so when we understand we might be triggered and we might be showing up this way because we understand we're in a very stressful situation, like we've lost a big client or whatever, then we can say, oh, wait, like we can recognize, I know exactly what I'm doing. And most of the time, if we don't have the words or the language or understand our trigger, we can't say, I know what I'm doing until much later, till we're going to bed at night and we're laying in bed and we're kicking ourselves because we said the wrong thing, which we all do. It's like, why did I say that? Why did I do this? Why did I? Now they probably hate me. Like you're going through all of it. And so the trick is like to catch yourself in the moment. Like I was saying with the leader in the meeting, because when we catch ourselves in the moment, even if we've already made the mistake, we can self-correct, we can apologize, we can figure out what we're feeling and then respond appropriately.
Gosh, very, very powerful. I want to move attention to the person that's actually working maybe as a team leader. So they're not the owner, they're not in the
Mm-hmm.
senior leadership team, but maybe we're talking now to account managers who are being promoted to maybe from an account manager to an account director. And all of a sudden, they're actually going to be responsible for leading a little team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe this is people that they've been working with at the same level, and all of a sudden they've got to manage them and
Mm.
lead them. And I'm sure that comes with its own challenges. Any sort of tips or advice for navigating when someone gets a promotion and they're suddenly probably still working themselves, in the weeds with clients, but also now responsible for other people?
Yeah. That is, I feel like one of the hardest transitions. You feel so vulnerable and you're like, to use kind of old terms, like you're scared you're going to walk into the break room and everybody's going to stop talking. Because because you're now the leader, whereas you used to be on that side of the table and you were getting the gossip, and it's just an awkward transition. So I always tell new managers to just ease into it. Don't go into your new job making sweeping changes and, just kind of ease into the leadership moment. Start to hone your skills, start to figure out, what you need to grow in and what changes you might need to make. The best tools are to lead with curiosity, to ask more questions than to be certain about anything. When you see things or see someone who's not, you know, living up to what they should be or standards or, always praise in public and critique in private. So don't shame anybody in public, or critique them, but wait until you have a private moment. But if you see somebody doing great or you see the team doing great, praise away in public, so you want them to know that you're not gonna you recognize and see what they're doing. And like I said before, everybody wants to be seen, everybody wants to be recognized. So see and recognize as much as you possibly can, encourage and support without taking the reins from them. So, still being able to let go of the things you need to be letting go of and leaning into the things you need to lean into. So don't abdicate, your duties just because now you're the leader. And remember to lead and not manage. We manage process, we lead people. So manage the process, make sure that the process is smooth and people have what they need, but lead the people, encourage them, see them, know them, help them to be the best versions of themselves. Notice their talents organically in the moment. Wow, what you just said was so articulate. That was like really great. Thank you. Or wow, I saw how you helped John today. So appreciate that was so cool that you did that. Or wow, the way you talked to the client. I've never talked to a client like that. I learned from you today. That was great. Thank you for that. So it's really specific and organic in the moment. Feedback is super powerful. And then people start to trust you because they're like, oh, she sees me. She noticed that. She's not just, often doing her own thing and relishing in leadership and authority. And so it's just those little things that adding together, people start to think, I want to follow you. You get me. You see the need, you're filling the need, you're doing the best you can, and over communicate. So if you can't solve that problem in the moment, there's not budget to hire another person, or there's not budget to get that software or whatever it is. So they're going to have to live in the problem for a little bit longer. Over explain why. Don't say, sorry, can't fix it now. Get really good early in your leadership at helping them understand what's happening and why and what your thinking is. I'm going to wait until after the first of the year when we can apply the budget. So this is a no now, but it probably will be a yes later. Just want you guys to understand the thought process behind it. Solutions on the way, but we're just going to have to buckle down together and get through it, best we can for now.
Great advice. Very good advice. Um, Tracy, I'm conscious of time and I've got a couple more questions if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to kind of talk to you about like more generically with leadership and maybe, people running companies, like what you've seen since starting Navigate the Journey in 2014 to now. Have you seen any sort of trends or new things appearing, new challenges that people are facing? Maybe some of the things that clients are telling you that perhaps they weren't telling you years ago.
I feel like this industry has always been fast paced and changing quickly, but now more than ever. I mean, it's really interesting to see the evolution and to see how people are responding with either leaning into things, being fearful about things, and how they're readjusting their agencies or really understanding that they might have to adopt new ways or new ways of thinking. And I think that the best agency leaders and agencies are getting ahead instead of behind. Like they have a plan, they're and that plan gives them the freedom to innovate, and they have direction. They know they can pivot if they need to, but they have a lot of clarity around what they want for the future. They know if they need to, really hone in on their expertise or find a niche or pivot. But also, when I think about my specific work, and I know, my husband Tom would have a different answer and how he's looking at strategically how companies need to scale and grow agencies specifically. But when I look at my specific line and area of the company, I think human attention is desired now more than ever by clients. A lot of things can be substituted with AI or supplemented with AI. And I think that's great. One thing that cannot be supplemented is human connection. And when we understand our clients and when we interact with our clients with a great curiosity, like we're really listening well, and we're asking amazing questions, and we're authentically and genuinely curious about them, and we want to understand their mission, we want to understand their problem, and we want to devise the best solution, and we want to show them that we care. These are going to be the agencies that survive and thrive. And so That means that we have to coach up every level of the agency on how to do this. How do we care about our clients more instead of complaining about them and arguing about them? And, how can we get good at, I'm not talking about, scope creep or overpromising and any of that. I'm talking about real human interaction. How can we be overly human in everything that we do so that we can counteract what's happening in the tech world and not be scared of it because we know our point of difference as humans and as a company. And we're able to show that authentically to our clients.
I think that's fantastic advice. For those listening, thinking, how can I do that more? She's absolutely right. What do you see happening that maybe people aren't doing that perhaps they could be doing in order to ensure that they are showing up curious, they are making that human connection?
I think it's again going back to what I always say, which is be more curious than certain. You most likely know the answer to their problem long before they do, but they need to know you've gone on the journey with them before you give it to them. So they want you to travel the whole journey with them in their conversation. So whether that's your discovery work or whatever it is like breathe in it. Allow them to tell you their journey, their history, their story, the depth of their problem. Even if you're like thinking in your head, I've seen this a million times. I've helped this type of client a million times. I know exactly what we should do for them. I know it's going to work. I'm super excited to tell them. Like, I want to tell them now. I wish they'd stop talking. Like that, like we learned this is when, I was getting my master's in psychology, they're training therapists basically to say, you're going to have the answer. They're going to be sitting on your couch or across the screen, and you're going to know what they should do. And it's right. And it probably is right. But your client's going to short circuit if you tell them the answer too soon. People need to be heard and feel understood before you can give them the answer. So learning that skill of curiosity and questions and affirmation. Oh, that must be hard. Oh, I get it. Oh, I see what you're trying to accomplish. Oh, that makes sense. I love that. I really like your mission. I can see how that's going to help the universe. All of these things. So you're curious, you're affirming, and then you serve up the response. I mean, this is deep client relationship, and when we're able to do that, you're going to see a point of difference because not only are you going to have a great client relationship, I guarantee you will get referrals out of that client. This will be a client that equals 3 clients if you do this well and you learn how to do this.
Love that. We're going to use that as a soundbite. I think that's such good counsel for everyone that works in an agency, actually. Um, okay, final question before we wrap up. What is there anything that we haven't covered that you think would be valuable and useful for someone listening that perhaps is struggling with their leadership, or maybe
Mm.
they're new to the leadership role and feels a little bit overwhelmed? Anything that any words of wisdom or advice that you can leave them with?
Yeah, I would say remember you're not alone. I have coached people in huge C-suite executives in billion-dollar companies, and I've coached agency owners that have $1 million in revenue. And I'm telling you, it's all the same. We're all struggling with the same things. We all have a little bit of imposter syndrome. We all are nervous about what people think about us. We're all trying the best that we can. And so it does not matter your role, your position, the size of your company, how many years of experience you have, any of those things. It's hard. Leadership is hard if you care. If you don't care, it's not hard. You can just go into work and lord over people and hope that it all, let the chips fall where they may. But if you care about this, it's hard and it's always going to be hard. So you're not alone. You're not alone. And every day, just remember, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. So each day, we're all just kind of holding each other's hands, just progressing along. And if that is your intention and you wake up every day with that intention, I just want to get a little bit better, then I guarantee you're on your way, if not already a great leader.
What a lovely, lovely fit to finish on, Tracy. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I want to ask the final question, which is working with you, because as I say, I first saw you on stage and I was blown away, as were most other people. You were very, very engaging. There was an exercise that you did with the whole audience, which was so powerful, and you had lots of people coming up to you afterwards, wanting to work with you. So, who do you typically work with? How can they reach you? What's the different services you offer?
Yeah, so we work with companies of all sizes, and usually kind of that small, mid-size type of company. We do, strategic planning. So if you've heard of, EOS or scaling up, or, so we have those kind of operating system strategic planning tools that we use. Then we do team building. So if you're trying to strengthen your team as a whole, and you want to increase trust and accountability and all of those things, we have workshops and virtual in person for those. And then we have coaching, so executive one-on-one coaching. And then if you're looking for a speaker, somebody to come in, corporately, or you have an association that you're a part of, and you're like, wow, we need a keynote speaker who's going to speak on these types of things, great leadership. And I come and do that as well. And I love coming and speaking to crowds like you heard me, just trying to help us all get to a better place. So if you know of anybody who wants to make their work matter or make their leadership matter more in an audience out there, I'm happy to talk about that as well. And then you can find us at navigatethejourney.com. Very simple.
Perfect. Tracy, thank you so much for joining me. This has been really, really powerful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.